Hi everybody, welcome back. This is part 29 of our Trumpeter 1/200 scale HMS Hood build. In this part I want to get some of the equipment fitted for the various superstructures, midships on the hood. So I'll be finishing off the PomPom bandstand now that I've got the PomPoms themselves sorted out last week. There's a little bit of detailing around the PomPom bandstand to do. The after control position or the after defence position needs finishing off as well, with the HACS directors and the searchlights, the 44-inch searchlights to be fitted. And we have a number of Carley Rafts to fit as well around the funnel bases, and there's some on the after defence position as well, so we'll be doing those. Now we'll be a bit backwards and forwards between the bench and the ship in this video, so apologies for that. Usually I do all my bench work in the middle of the video and then fit them towards the end, but I'm not going to be able to do that this week, so we'll be backwards and forwards. I'll be showing you the individual elements and then fitting them to the model. So we'll get over to the bench and get the first of those elements sorted out. Okay, these are the 3D Carley floats. And again, all I've done with these is prime them and paint them. I've just used LP15 on these, which is Tamiya's IGN grey. It is one of the base colours for my grey mix for the rest of the ship, but I just wanted something with a bit of variation, just a very slight variation to the rest of the hull. So I've just done these in straight LP15. I'm not sure that they'll look that much different. The other thing that I'm doing with these is giving them a very light dry brush with Tamiya's XF19, which is sky grey. And that just brings out the detail of the man ropes around the side, and just shows them off a little bit. This is the large Carley that goes on the aft side of the after control position. So that very light dry brushing. This is a flat, old, fairly stiff brush, and that just brings out the details nicely on these. These are the standard size Carleys. I think these are 8x5 or 10x5, I can't remember which ones I ordered. Just work round. And a little dry brush like this really does make the detail of these 3D parts pop out. And it just adds a slightly different tone as well to the rafts. So there were identified as being the same colour as the ship, but they are a different material obviously to the steel of the ship, so this just adds a little bit of variation to that. We don't have to worry about all of these because quite a few of them were stacked in pairs, so obviously you won't see the one that's on the bottom. I'll just go around the outside of those sets. It's one of the great benefits of these 3D parts that there are no mould lines. Even if you could get this sort of detail in injection moulding, you would be left with a mould line to deal with. So I'll carry on. I've got 15 of these to do altogether, so we'll work around and get these all highlighted. That XF19 is just enough to bring that detail out on these parts. I think I mentioned a while ago that Pontos do provide some etched brass parts to detail the Trumpeter kit Carleys, but they are a complete nightmare to build. I did a couple and got thoroughly sick of them really. The etched brass was meant to represent these ropes around the side, and they provide also a piece that goes in the centre. So the amount of work that would be needed to do 14 or 15 of these, which is what you need for the ship, it would just take hours and hours. I think I did 3 or 4. If you are going to buy any 3D printed parts, I'd thoroughly recommend you getting the 3D Carleys, because these are an absolute doddle compared with trying to super detail the Trumpeter parts. And the finish is much better as well. There's absolutely no way I could get the effect of these using the Trumpeter parts and etched brass. I just want to paint the oars in on these Carley Rafts, just using some Tamiya Deck Tan. Again, this is from the lacquer paint range. Now obviously we don't need a lot of this, just enough to pick out the oars which are printed into the Carley Raft itself. You can breathe at home. I'm not breathing, but you can breathe. Right, I'm going to try and fit these Carley Rafts now. And the first one I'm going to do is this one, the large one, on the back face of the after control position. I'm using some thick super glue for this, which is a bit risky really, but because it's on this vertical surface, I can't really think of another way of doing it. So we'll just get it somewhere near with the tweezers. I've just put super glue on the bottom face, and I just want to get it obviously level, but I also want it to be able to protrude equally on either side, because it's wider than the actual bulkhead there. Yeah, that's okay. These ones on the vertical faces are the hardest ones to do. Obviously I've got this one, there's a small one at the side here, and then there are 2 forward on the side of the bridge. But once we've got those done, the others just sit horizontally, so they should be less risky to fit. So we'll do this one on the side now. I'm just putting a bit of glue on the bottom, and that's because we're going to be less likely to see it there, and that's all I'm putting on. So I hope I'm not covering this up. I might be, but the important thing for me is to get this on properly. I'm going to leave that, that's close enough. Right, we'll do the more straightforward ones forward now. I just want to check the position of these because they're slightly bigger than the Trumpeter rafts. You'll notice that I've taken the motorised dinghy off here. It just came loose, so I've just removed it altogether just to prevent it getting damaged. So right, these are double stacks, but I'll just put one on to start with and then put the second one on top. The next two go on the roof here, so in that sort of position. So I'll just get a spot of glue on the centre underside of the raft. At this stage of the build, we're looking for places to rest our fingers. I'll start to put this second stack of rafts on now. There's not an awful lot to find a gluing position on these, so we'll just have to get what we can. That's okay. Okay, so we'll fit the last of the Carley rafts here, and we're going to be fitting it here at this part of the bridge, just below the Admiral's Bridge. Now, most models of the Hood and a lot of the 1941 versions, which a lot of people build, have a couple of Carley rafts here at the front part of the bridge. I think they're staggered, something like that. I can't recall exactly now, and I've filled the holes in on the Trumpeter side of the bridge. So I can't remember exactly where they go, but they were staggered, something in that vicinity. But photographs that we can see of the ship on its way to meet the Bismarck and Prinz Eugen at the Denmark Strait. The two rafts here have been moved further aft, one of them here, and another one around the forward funnel base. So I've fitted those, and I'll take a still photograph of the positioning on the other side at the end of this sequence, but we'll get this last raft in here. I've already put the other one on the other side, so I just want to check the location of it. And I found that I had to put some glue on these stanchions here, just to hold the raft in place, as well as putting glue on the back of the Carley raft itself. As I said, these Micromaster rafts, because they're so accurate, the actual man ropes on the underside means that you don't have a lot of gluing surface. The light's very bright. I'm sorry about that. It's great for modelling, but not so great for photography. Just want to get it nice and level with the top of the shield here. That's okay, leave it alone. Once it's in place, just let the glue set. So these are 44-inch searchlights. The Hood had 6 of these. 2 of them are already on the ship, and these are the ones that I'm going to be fitting. These are the 3D parts from Micromaster, and they're all one piece. You can see some nice detail on there. This is the cable. There's a couple of handles at the back, an elevation and a training wheel. And all I've done with those is prime them, paint them in the ship's grey. I've highlighted the lens with some clear varnish, and I've just given them a little dry brushing just to bring out the detail with some Tamiya Sky Grey. So that's all they've needed. And you might remember many episodes ago, I can't remember which one it was, we built these Pontos searchlights, which are in resin. They took quite a bit to build, actually, from what I can remember. The difficult thing was to get the cable around the side, and the lens features two pieces of etched brass because these lights had the appearance of two sets of crossed braces in them. So the etched brass work was quite difficult on those. The problem with them is that they don't have a pedestal. So you'll remember maybe if you saw that episode that I'd got these built, and when we positioned them in the locations on the ship, they sat far too low and the actual searchlight couldn't see above the splinter shield or the railings. So that was a bit strange really, I couldn't understand that. But apart from that, they're quite nicely detailed. This is what's supplied in the Trumpeter kit. The one thing that I haven't put on here is Trumpeter supplies some little brass, etched brass wheels, training wheels and elevation wheels. But I'm not going to put those on. They might be useful for the spares box, so I'm not going to use them. But you can imagine what that would look like. I suppose what you might be able to do is use this pedestal from the Trumpeter kit and mount the Pontos resin searchlight on top of it. That might work. There is a little plinth supplied in etched brass which you could put down at the bottom there just to add a little bit of detail. But it's a bit odd, and there's no instructions at all in the Pontos set about these, so it's a bit strange. However, in our case, I've just got a very quick fix with these 3D parts. As I said, they really just need painting, and they're good to go. So let's get over and get those put onto the model now. Okay, so next I'll put these searchlights on. Just with just a little drop of super glue on the pin. Not too much, I don't want to get it on the deck. And there's a pair on the upper platform as well. Carefully does it. So these are the HACS directors painted. So these have just been primed. The sequence was that I painted the white band first, then masked that off, followed by the grey over the top of that. And all I'm going to do on these now is a bit of detail painting. I'm not sure how much of this we're going to be able to see, but I'll do it anyway. All I'm going to do is pick out the seats in a dark grey. This is actually rubber black, which is a nice scale black. Don't want anything too stark on these models. Okay, so that's as much of the detail painting that I want to do. I just want to fit the top covers now. I think that's it. I'll leave it there for the moment anyway. And no, we can't see the seats either. But never mind, it was worth a try. So I can do the other two of those. and again we'll get back over to the model and get them fitted. So you might have noticed that these directors are different. This is the after director, which sits on top of the after control position, and this one is one of the bridge directors, and this one doesn't have the wing around the side like the forward ones do. It might be that these had the wings because they were positioned higher up on the ship, and it was maybe just a bit of a wind baffle, just to give that bit of extra protection for the crew. I don't know, but it's an interesting detail. So again, they're all ready now. They can go on the ship. I'll be using some epoxy to glue these on. So let's get over and do that and get these fitted. Okay, we can fit the HACS director now, having painted them and fitted the top. But one of the problems with them is that the pin on the underside is very small compared with the hole in the pedestal. So basically the only glue surface in that case would have been the actual underside of the director onto the top face of the pedestal. So what I've done is added a piece of tube styrene as an extension pin that will go right the way down into the pedestal and hopefully give us a stronger joint. So that's CA'd onto the bottom of the 3D part, and I'll use some 2-part epoxy, 5-minute epoxy, to glue the pin down into the pedestal. So we'll get that glued up, get some epoxy into the join. And I'm going to put some of this inside the pedestal as well, just to make sure I've got good contact. I've not put any on the top of the pedestal. I don't want it squeezing out onto the outside of the pedestal itself. So hopefully that should do the job. I hope there's not too much in there. When the camera's out of the way, I'll just check that they're nice and straight and level. And I'll just quickly do the other side now, then we can move on to the aft part of the ship and do the aft director. So this is the aft director now on top of the after control position, the slightly different director with the shorter wings on it, or the narrower wings on it. And also the pedestal itself is shallower, so the styrene tube on this director is shorter, obviously. I think that's going to be really strong when it's set up, so the epoxy is probably the right choice for this application. And particularly for this one, which is fairly exposed up on this position, the chances of it staying there if it was just balanced on top with some styrene glue or super glue would be pretty remote, I think. I'll just get the camera out of the way to do the final adjustment of these directors, because I've only got 5 minutes to get them sorted out. Okay, with the HACS in place on the after control position, all I've got to do now with this is to fit a couple of davits, and I need to make up 2 flag lockers for either side. Okay, so back to the bench and we'll get those made up now. Okay, just these few parts to do for the after defence position. So we've got these 2 davits, which obviously need folding onto themselves through 180 degrees. And these are the flag lockers. We'll come on to those. We'll just get these davits out of the way first. And all I want to do really is just solder these together. So the way I'm going to do that is just to tin the parts and then heat up the iron just to run around the edge just to seal them. You can just fold these onto themselves and use some super glue, but I've had them come apart on me doing them like that, so I prefer it this way. And you just got to be careful to get the tinning done on the right side, so that's the back face of the part. So I just want to tin the back face of this. Doesn't need much. You just put the vent on. That might be, you might be able to hear that vent, but I'd rather you heard it than me breathe these solder fumes in. So all I'm doing here is just running a tiny bit of solder onto the back face, and that's absolutely plenty to seal the part up. And I only do it on the back face, I suppose it is, of the davit. A bit too much on there. And this little pulley at the front folds over as well. There we are. I'll give that a clean up. These davits sit in these little brackets at the bottom, which provide a bit of relief detail. I think it's an unnecessary elaboration really from Pontos. I think they could have just moulded or etched the bolt detail onto the bottom of the davit. I don't think it really adds that much, to be honest. So that's one of the davits. Using solder on them just means that the back face here doesn't open up. Sometimes if you just use glue, they open up a little bit, and when you paint them you can see that they're obviously two halves joined together. So I prefer this method now. Okay, so that's our two davits made up. Anyway, let's get these flag lockers made. You might remember how we went about these when we did the forward ones on the bridge. There were 5 larger flag lockers on the bridge, and the method I arrived at was to fold these up except for the bottom base, and that allowed us to paint the locker in the grey and then just slide the printed flags up from the inside, so that we got the apparent colours of the flags showing through this grille at the front side. So I'll do the same again with these, and as usual we want to make sure that these box shapes are free of any brass fret stubs, which will prevent them closing up properly. And the other thing I did with these was just to take off the corner of the base, and that just allowed it to tuck up inside the box when we'd made it. That's all it needs, just a corner just nipped off, and it just helps that fold up a little bit later on. The first thing I want to do is to fold, let's just get it the right way around, so there's some detail on the top and sides of these. With these, the first thing that you want to do is to fold the weaker part of the brass and hold on to the weak part. So pinning the grid in the pliers and bending the solid piece of brass down, and that just protects this delicate part. If we'd have held on to the solid part and tried to bend the weaker part down, we might have distorted it more easily, but holding it in the pliers isolates it and means that there's less chance of damaging it. Somebody made a comment that I do a lot of work with these pliers as opposed to the photo etch bender, which is this. This is a very old one now, made out of a very hard plastic. The more modern ones are made out of aluminium or some sort of alloy anyway, but a lot more durable than this. And you can get them in different sizes now. But I very rarely use this. The only time I'd use it is for a very long bend, which I'd use the back end for, or maybe now and again to use these pins for one or two awkward bends. But I just find these pliers so much easier to use. They're comfortable in the hand, and there's just no messing about with trying to position the parts in the bender. So it's my usual way of doing these parts. When I did the forward lockers, I used super glue on them, and they held together okay. They're on the ship, but I'm going to solder these. Obviously what I don't want to do is to block up any of the pigeonholes, so I'll just use a very tiny amount along the sides here. Okay, that's closed up enough. Right, that'll be much stronger than using the glue. So you remember I'd made these little nicks on the corners here, and that just helps this part when we fold it down just to tuck in behind these legs. There's little feet on the bottom of the locker. So with that all set up, I'll just give it a quick clean up. So hopefully I've just relocated out of the sun a little bit. Hopefully that's a better view. So that's one of our lockers folded up. I can get that primed and painted, and then we can fit the flags inside. Okay, so our locker's all ready, and I'll just give these some etching primer and a coat of our grey, and then we can fit the flags and fold the bottom up and get them on the back of the after defence position. Okay, so I've got these lockers painted up in the grey for the rest of the ship, and I want to fit the dummy flags now. These are provided on the Pontos set here, just as paper prints, so they need to be cut out and applied to the inside of the locker, and that just gives the impression that they're loaded with all the various signal flags on the ship. Right, so I just need to check that these fit into the lockers. They can be quite a snug fit, or at least the forward ones were, and in that case we just need to give them a little bit of a trim. Usually they're a bit too wide, but that looks like it's okay. Now that's gone in first time. I'm just going to take a little bit off the bottom, and I've got a bit of thin PVA to attach these. We don't want lots of glue, obviously, because it'll just block the holes up. Although it will dry clear, this stuff, so it's not too much of a problem if it blocks up some of the holes. See how that goes. We've got some spares if it doesn't work. I've got some spare printed flags to have another go. I think when that's dry, it should dry transparent, so that should be quite a good result, I think. Okay, I just want to wait for that to dry now, and then we can fold the bottom panels up. So they're set now, so I can just fold the bottom down, and you can see here how the little cutout that we made just helps this piece to sit down properly. It just avoids the part catching, the underside catching on the little legs at the front. The difficulty we've had in the past with these is that there's very little contact point on the legs. So these are accurate in the sense that they've got little feet on the corners. But that does mean that they're difficult to actually get to glue down onto a deck because there's such a small contact point. In this case, what we can do is just glue the back of the locker to the splinter shield around the outside of the structure. So it's actually glued to the shield rather than the deck. So hopefully that will be enough to enable us to get these parts into position. Right, so that's the flag lockers and davits or hoists ready to fit onto the ship. So we'll go over there now and get these onto the after control position, and then that should be that part of the structure finished. Okay, I'm going to fit the flag lockers first, and they're located here on the top platform of the after control position. And they actually fit half on the splinter shield and half on the railing here. And in fact, if you look at the original Trumpeter kit, Trumpeter moulded this shield here with a curious sort of grid pattern printed on it or moulded onto it. And that was because they mistook the pigeonholes of the flag locker as this sort of structure. So they just misinterpreted some photographs presumably, which appeared to show a checkerboard sort of pattern around this point of the ship. So I'll be using some of the acrylic PVA glue, and I can apply it just to the inside of the shield, and hopefully it'll just need a spot. Should be enough to secure the flag locker. So I've just got a bit too much on there. Just clean some of that PVA off. That's the great thing about using PVA. It's very clean. If you make any mistakes, it just wipes straight off. and it doesn't damage any of your previous work. As I said, I want this half on the shield and half on the railing. That's okay, so it's just halfway there. So I'll fit the other one now. You might be able to see this one a little bit better. Just got a trace of the PVA down at the bottom there, but easy cleanup. It's great stuff. The davits or hoists fit here at the side, and I'm going to have to use some thick CA for that. The PVA is not going to be strong enough for that, so I'll just put a dab of CA on that hoist. Okay, so I think that's the after control position finished. We've got the searchlights in position, the HACS director on, the 2 flag lockers in place, and the 2 hoists fitted as well. We've also got the large Carley at the back here and the 10x5 standard size Carley here on the side. The position of these Carley rafts did vary through the ship's career, but the latest photographs I've seen show this one positioned here at the side. Just to bring you up to date with some other work that I've done on the PomPom bandstand. Obviously we built the after PomPom last week in part 28. But this bandstand's now completely finished, and I've added a few more details to it. The ladder is fitted to the back here, which access the bandstand, and I've also fitted a canvas screen here on the forward side of the bandstand. That's seen on photographs just suspended from the top and extending down to the deck. So I've reproduced that using some metal foil from a wine bottle, actually, in a similar way that I did to the screen around the bridge. I've also added the ready use lockers for this after PomPom here, which are provided in the Pontos set, and I've had some conversations with Sean, who's given me a lot of information previously, and I've mentioned before in these videos. He's helped me an awful lot in terms of research, because I was querying in the last video whether or not these lockers should also be present forward with the forward pom-poms. But our conclusion is that they weren't fitted to the shelter deck forward. The forward pom-poms were supplied, we believe, from ready use supply on the deck below, in other words the forecastle deck underneath. Pontos do provide 4 of these ready use lockers, but if we're correct, we only need these 2 on the aft bandstand. The other elements that I've added here are some ladders to access the aft quad pedestals. You can't really see them, they're tucked around the back. And also there was a bit of a query when we were building the quads about their ready use supply. Trumpeter provide 2 ready use lockers on the pedestal, and as we saw when we built the pedestals, we only needed 1. The second ready use locker is down below on deck, and from photographs I've determined that it was in this position here, so just underneath on the deck and next to the ladder which access the pedestal for that quad. So that's all the work done on this aft side. I've just got a couple of gangways to fit here and further forward, both port and starboard, but that's nothing really. I'll do that when I come to do the quarterdeck details. Moving forward, we have the forward searchlight position and the Carley Rafts here stacked up. and also on the front side. I've got some denton rafts to fit along this front edge as well. I've done a few on the other side, but I haven't got time this week to do the rest of them, so we'll come back to that in a future episode. And then moving forward to the bridge, we've obviously fitted the forward HACS director and the Carley float on the bridge side here, which replaced the two Carley floats that are often seen on models of the Hood in this position on the forward part of the bridge. Right, so that's all those parts in place. That's everything I really set out to do this week. And next week I'm going to carry on in the same sort of style really. I've got to do some work around the funnels. And what I'm going to be doing is fitting the funnel guys which come down onto the superstructure from the funnels. And I want to do those because I'll be fitting some representation of spare timber or lumber that was carried or stored along the sides of the funnels on the funnel bases. And I can't do that until I know where the funnel guys are going to go, because some of them go down onto the area where that lumber was stored. So I'll fit the funnel guys and then I'll just make up the pieces of lumber out of various sizes of strip styrene to fit around the funnel bases to represent that storage. The other thing that I'll do whilst I'm in that area is build the two derricks that went either side of the after funnel as well, and they're all provided for in the Pontos set. If we've got time, I might do some work on the forward part of the bridge. I fitted the two forward quad mountings last week, but I didn't get round to doing the railings around them or fitting the ready use lockers, so hopefully if I've got a bit of time next week I'll do that as well. So that'll be coming up in part 30 at the usual time, Friday night. But until then, stay safe everybody, have a great week, and I'll see you in another 7 days. Bye for now.